Welcome to QuickSpeak, the English podcast for learners. Today, we're going to explore empathy. You probably already know that empathy is about understanding other people's feelings, but we're going to uncover some surprising facts and dive into the complexities of how empathy shapes our lives.
What's fascinating is that empathy isn't always straightforward. We might assume it's easy to step into someone else's shoes, but there are hidden gaps in our ability to truly understand each other.
You're right. I've heard of these empathy gaps, but I don't fully understand them. Can you explain what causes these gaps?
One of the most intriguing types is the intergroup empathy gap. It turns out we're naturally wired to empathize more easily with people who are similar to us, our in-group. When it comes to people outside our groups or out-groups, our empathy tends to falter.
So if someone is from a different background, has different beliefs, or maybe even just cheers for a different sports team,
Think about how easy it is to feel for a close friend who's going through a hard time. Now imagine someone you barely know, perhaps, from a different culture or social group, experiencing the same thing. It's often more challenging to access that same level of understanding and compassion.
That's thought-provoking. It makes me realize that our empathy can be limited by our own social circles and experiences.
This gap isn't just a social phenomenon. It's deeply rooted in our neurology. Brain imaging studies have shown that certain areas of our brains, the ones associated with empathy, actually show less activity when we see members of our outgroup suffering. It's like our brains are less engaged in processing their emotions.
Wow, so it's not just a conscious choice to withhold empathy. But there's something happening on a deeper biological level.
That's what the research suggests. And it has real consequences. Think about prejudice discrimination or even our willingness to help someone in need. These intergroup empathy gaps can make us less likely to reach out to offer support or to advocate for those who are different from us.
This raises an important question. If we're wired this way, can we actually overcome these intergroup empathy gaps? Can we train our brains to be more inclusive in how we experience empathy?
The first step is awareness. Just recognizing that these biases exist is crucial. Then we can start to actively challenge them. One powerful way is through what's called intergroup contact.
Let's unpack this. What does intergroup contact involve?
Essentially, it's about intentionally seeking out positive interactions with people from different backgrounds. It could involve joining a club or organization with diverse members, volunteering in a community that's different from your own, or simply striking up conversations with people you wouldn't normally interact with.
So by getting out of our comfort zones and exposing ourselves to different perspectives, we can start to bridge those empathy gaps.
It's about challenging our preconceived notions and replacing them with genuine human connection. Those positive experiences can reshape our understanding of outgroups and help our brains rewire themselves to experience empathy more broadly.
That's a hopeful message. It means we have the power to choose to expand our empathy and create a more inclusive world. Now, you mentioned other types of empathy gaps. What are some of the other ways our empathy can miss the mark?
One that's particularly relevant to our everyday lives is the hot-cold empathy gap. It refers to the difficulty we have understanding someone else's actions or feelings when they're in a very different emotional state than we are.
Can you give me an example of how this hot-cold dynamic plays out?
Imagine you're trying to give advice to a friend who's incredibly stressed about a presentation. You might say, just relax, it's not a big deal. But if you're feeling calm and collected, you're likely underestimating the intensity of their anxiety in that moment. You're in a cold state, failing to grasp the power of their hot emotional state. That's so relatable. It's like when you try to reason with someone who's furious and they just can't seem to hear you. Their anger is so strong. It's clouding their judgment.
The fascinating thing is that it works both ways. When we're the ones in a heightened emotional state, we often underestimate how we'll feel once we've calmed down. Think about impulsive decisions made in the heat of anger or fear. Later, we might wonder, what was I thinking?
So this hot-cold empathy gap can lead to misunderstandings, poor decision-making, and even conflict in our relationships.
You hit the nail on the head. It's a constant challenge in navigating our interactions with others. But by understanding this dynamic, we can at least start to recognize when it's at play and adjust our responses accordingly.
That makes a lot of sense. Now, there's another aspect of empathy I'm curious to explore, one that often sparks debate: gender differences in empathy. Is it true that women are more empathetic than men?
This is a topic where we need to be careful, not to oversimplify,
There's certainly research suggesting that women tend to score higher on self-reported measures of empathy, meaning they report experiencing more empathy in their daily lives. But self-reporting can be tricky.
You're right, our own perceptions of our empathy might not always reflect the full picture. How do men and women compare when it comes to actually expressing and demonstrating empathy in real-world situations?
Well, some studies indicate that women may be more adept at reading emotional cues. They might be better at picking up on subtle facial expressions, body language, and tone of voice that reveal someone's true feelings.
Interesting. It sounds like there could be differences in how men and women process emotional information and express empathy.
There's evidence to support that idea. For example, some research points to biological factors like oxytocin, a hormone linked to social bonding and empathy.
Okay.
Women often have higher levels of oxytocin,
Yeah.
which could contribute to these observed differences.
But does that mean empathy is purely biological, predetermined by our gender?
Not at all. We have to be cautious about overemphasizing biology. Empathy is incredibly complex, and it's shaped by a multitude of factors, including our upbringing, cultural norms, personal experiences, and even conscious effort. It's not just about our genes.
So while there might be average differences between men and women in terms of empathy, it's essential to avoid making sweeping generalizations about individuals
Absolutely.
based on their gender.
Everyone's empathy journey is unique, influenced by a combination of nature and nurture. What matters most is recognizing that empathy is a skill we can all develop and strengthen, regardless of our gender. That's a crucial point. Empathy isn't a fixed trait. It's something we can cultivate and nurture throughout our lives.
So if we want to become more empathetic individuals, how can we actually strengthen those empathy muscles? Are there specific exercises or practices that can help?
There are many ways to enhance our capacity for empathy. One that I find particularly effective is active listening. It's about going beyond simply hearing the words someone is saying. It's about truly tuning in to their emotional state, trying to grasp their perspective, and then reflecting back what you've understood to make sure you're on the same page.
So it's about being fully present in the conversation, both intellectually and emotionally.
Exactly. It's about demonstrating that you care, that you're making a genuine effort to step into their world and see things through their eyes.
That makes sense. When someone feels truly heard and understood, it can create a powerful sense of connection. What are some other practical techniques for boosting empathy?
Another valuable exercise is engaging in perspective taking.
Right.
It's a deliberate effort to imagine yourself in someone else's situation, to consider their thoughts, feelings, and motivations.
How can we do that effectively? It seems like a challenging mental leap.
It can be. A good starting point is to ask yourself questions about the person you're interacting with.
Okay.
What might they be thinking and feeling right now? What experiences have shaped their worldview? What challenges are they facing that you might not be aware of? By asking these questions, you begin to move beyond assumptions and judgments and toward a deeper understanding of their reality.
It's about shifting our focus from me to we, from our own limited perspective to a more expansive view.
Precisely.
That encompasses the other person's experiences.
And that shift in perspective is at the heart of empathy. Now, beyond these individual practices, there are also ways to cultivate empathy through real-world experiences. Volunteering or engaging in community service can be incredibly powerful.
How? So what's the connection between helping others and strengthening our empathy?
When you work alongside people from diverse backgrounds, people whose lives and challenges might be vastly different from your own, you naturally start to see the world through a wider lens. You witness their struggles firsthand, you hear their stories, and you begin to understand the complexities of their lives.
It's like stepping outside of our own social bubbles and encountering the richness and diversity of the human experience.
Exactly, and that exposure can be transformative. It breaks down stereotypes, challenges our assumptions, and fosters a sense of shared humanity.
I love that it's a reminder that empathy isn't just an abstract concept. It's something we can actively build through our actions and interactions with the world. Are there other ways we can nurture our empathy beyond face-to-face interactions?
Absolutely. We can also expand our empathetic horizons through the power of storytelling. Books, movies, television shows, even music. These forms of art can transport us into the lives of others, allowing us to experience the world from their perspectives.
So by immersing ourselves in stories that feature characters from different backgrounds, cultures, and walks of life, we can develop a deeper understanding of their challenges and triumphs.
It's like taking a virtual journey into someone else's world, feeling their joys and sorrows, and gaining insights into their motivations and desires.
That's fascinating. It makes me think about all the times I've been deeply moved by a book or a film, feeling a profound sense of connection with characters who are completely different from me. It's a reminder that storytelling can be a powerful tool for building empathy.
It certainly can, and it's a reminder that empathy is a multifaceted experience. It's something we can cultivate through conscious effort, real-world interactions, and even through the transformative power of art.
This has been such an insightful conversation about empathy and the many ways it shapes our lives and our world. You've given us so much to think about.
It's been my pleasure. I hope our listeners feel inspired to embrace empathy as a force for positive change in their own lives and in the world around them.
Now, before we wrap up, I have to ask, we've talked about the benefits of empathy, but are there any potential downsides? Can you have too much empathy? Is there a point where it becomes detrimental?
That's a thoughtful question. While empathy is generally considered a positive attribute, it's true that there can be downsides if it's not managed effectively. For individuals who are highly empathetic, especially those in helping professions, like healthcare or social work, there's a risk of experiencing emotional exhaustion or burnout.
That makes sense. If you're constantly absorbing the pain and suffering of others, it can take a toll on your own well-being.
Exactly. It's essential for highly empathetic individuals to set healthy boundaries and prioritize self-care to avoid feeling overwhelmed by the emotional burdens of others. Another potential pitfall is that empathy can sometimes be biased or misdirected.
Can you explain what you mean by that?
Well, as we discussed earlier with the intergroup empathy gap, we tend to feel more empathy for those who are similar to us. This natural bias can lead to situations where we extend more compassion and support to members of our own groups while neglecting the needs of those who are different.
So our empathy can sometimes reinforce existing social divisions and inequalities.
Unfortunately, that's possible. It's why it's so important to be mindful of our biases and to actively cultivate empathy for everyone, regardless of their background beliefs or circumstances.
That's a powerful reminder that empathy requires conscious effort and a willingness to challenge our own ingrained preferences.
It's a journey of continuous growth and self-reflection.
That's a great point. So even when we stumble or fall short, in our efforts to be empathetic, we can learn from those experiences and keep striving to do better.
Empathy isn't about perfection, it's about progress.
This conversation has been incredibly enlightening. I feel like I've gained a much deeper understanding of empathy, its complexities, its nuances, and its incredible power.
I'm glad to hear that it's been a pleasure exploring these ideas with you.
Before we wrap up, is there any final thought or takeaway message you'd like to leave our listeners with?
Yes, I think it's vital to remember that empathy is not a sign of weakness. It's not about being overly sentimental or letting people take advantage of your kindness.
Okay.
True empathy requires strength, courage, and a willingness to engage with the world in all its messy complexity.
I love that it's about embracing our shared humanity, recognizing that even in our differences, we are all connected by the fundamental experiences of joy and sorrow, love and loss, hope and fear.
Precisely. And when we tap into that shared humanity, when we allow ourselves to truly see and understand the experiences of others, we unlock a profound sense of purpose and connection. We make the world a more compassionate, more just, and more equitable place for everyone.
That's such a beautiful and inspiring message. I think that's a perfect note to end on. Thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your insights on empathy. It's been a truly enriching conversation.
It's been my pleasure.
And to our listeners, we hope you found this episode informative and thought-provoking. Remember, empathy is a journey we embark on together. And by cultivating this extraordinary human capacity, we can create a world where everyone feels seen, heard, and understood. That's it for today's episode of QuickSpeak, the English podcast for learners. We encourage you to subscribe to our podcast for more episodes on captivating topics that will help you improve your English. And don't forget to visit our website, which is linked in the description. You'll find vocabulary lists, exercises, and more resources from today's episode. It's a great way to review what we've covered and continue your English language journey. Keep practicing your English, keep learning, and keep exploring the fascinating world around us.